we have a podcast to shoot. Come on, don't be fucky. I worked really hard on this.
Okay, let's do it. Hi everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
Rabotat Radio episode number 5.
I don't know which one.
The Nikki Manos episode. It's your episode, dude. What are you?
It is my episode.
Well, we're here. You put together something fabulous for today. Do you want to tell the viewers, the listeners, what's up?
I did. So, if you saw that epic intro, this is going to be an epic podcast because we're watching westerns today.
Yeehaw!
So I know someone in Rabotat, Madame De Fer, came up with Watched or Wasted, where we talked about things we had watched with Dave Austin.
And got wasted.
And got wasted, yeah, a little follow-up to that. Whew, boy. It's a rough morning the next morning. My alter ego, Nikki Manos, that just released Trouble on My Mind, is a Western. The whole project, the concept for the project is kind of a techno-Western. So I thought, to celebrate Nikki Manos, we would watch some really weird Westerns that I'd never seen. Mm-hmm. I grew up with Westerns. My grandpa and I used to watch them all the time, and they're a big part of my childhood. I'm from New Mexico. I'm from Billy the Kid territory, where a lot of historical characters are from that inspired Westerns. So I wanted to watch them today.
Yeah, felt fitting.
But Madame De Fer is not the biggest fan of them. We both love horror movies, and I can always get her to watch a horror movie or like a really schlocky movie. So we might have some of those. But why don't you really watch Westerns?
First, I never really grew up with them. I mean, my dad kind of watched a few of them. I knew of a few growing up, and I ended up going to film school as a young adult and ended up watching a few in film school, like High Noon specifically. But for me, I'm from Maine. It's more Stephen King country than it is Billy the Kid country. So I culturally was just in a different area. Second big reason, usually for me, very long-winded. Westerns tend to breathe, which is really nice cinematically, but if you're not ready for that type of a commitment, it can be a commitment. And the third biggest reason, I think for me, particularly as a woman, is the misogynistic and sexual assault aspect of a lot of Western movies that exist, where women are used time and time again as a plot kind of point to kind of go into something else, and a lot of the time it's a sexual assault or something really fucked up. And let me tell you something, it's difficult to watch, I think, as a lady. Exactly.
And growing up, and kind of especially now in the times that we live in, it's something when I watch Westerns that I kind of cringe at. And so what I tried to do is not trying to torture her on this podcast, and also just trying to find some stuff that maybe you could watch that you haven't seen, and if any of those things that she mentions kind of turn you off to watching Westerns, because it's kind of a film genre that was the most popular that is now not popular at all. It was like the Avengers of the Marvel Cinematic Universe of the 20s through the 60s was Westerns. I tried to find films that are weird. I tried to find films that are either highly rated on IMDb of a 7.5 user rating, or something low, like a 4.4 user rating. I looked in the parental guide to see if there was anything about sexual assault. I don't really condone watching sexual assault for entertainment. We watch a lot, or in general. You know?
Yeah, you don't
Duh. But we watch a lot of horror movies, and that stuff's in there, and so I still wanted to find something that was enjoyable. So, short. She mentioned that they're really long. Westerns are epics, usually, so they are 2 hours and 30 minutes up, they're always plus 2 hours, but we believe a really entertaining movie usually should be about an hour and a half, something that is, kind of a nice, easy watch. So everything that I put into these cups that Madame De Fer shot, all these films, are about under 2 hours, if not an hour and a half.
So, in order to pick the films that Nikki Manos chose today, he put 4 films into one of 3 cups, and you named each one the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Did. Classic, surfer movie, if you haven't seen it. Highly recommend it. I don't know why that's in here. No. She was aiming for the ugly, which was me.
Aww.
And I was a little bummed about that, but she didn't hit me, so
instead,
that ugly just dodged the bullets.
Instead, I hit the bad.
So there's a collection of films in here, little pieces of paper, not actual films. And she's going to draw randomly a film out of the cup.
Yep. I don't know what's in here. You did all this work. Please, do you mind holding it up and doing the honors while I
don't know if this is going to shake it up. It's a pretty small cup.
It's very small.
There's a lot of paper in here.
To pick Keoma, 1976.
Keoma. I'm pretty sure that's an Italian Western.
Oh.
And it could be a Spanish Western. It's another thing, too. I haven't seen most of these Westerns in here. Keoma.
We're going to go situate. We are going to get comfy.
We're going to rustle up some comfort.
And we're going to get back here. And next time you see us, we are going to be meeting for a wrap-up discussion. And we'll talk about what we thought about the film.
Come on in. You've been gone quite a while this time. Where you been? Fighting a war. Meet anybody faster than you? Not yet.
Aren't you tired of killing?
I have to survive.
Keoma! Keoma! Now to take your life away. No, I won't this time.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers to Keoma.
That anti-masking fuck. Whoops.
Did you just make a mess on your phone?
Let's do that again.
Oh my god. You got it. Hey, don't cry. So aggressive.
So, I'm really glad we watched Keoma.
Yeah. Out of all of the movies we could have picked out of these cups, that was a really nice one to have chosen and pretty appropriate for everything, I think.
Definitely. It's a spaghetti Western, so that means it's an Italian Western. Mm-hmm. The golden age for Italian Westerns are the mid to late 60s and the early 70s. That's Good, Bad, and the Ugly. For a few dollars more. Death Rides a Horse. Day of Anger, which are all these really classic Westerns. This is a Twilight Western, though. And basically what that means is it's a Western that took place in the later part of the 70s, which is kind of like the Twilight era, the Twilight age of Westerns in Italy. There aren't too many made at this point. It's kind of had been played out to a certain extent. Yeah. So these newer Westerns are interesting because after researching it a little bit, I've seen a few of them before. And guaranteed Quentin Tarantino and Eli Roth, they're a huge influence on them. Yep. There's Five from the Apocalypse by Lucio Fulci, which is a amazing horror director. He's done some of our favorite horror movies. Zombie, which is a zombie fighting a shark, if you haven't seen that.
Yeah, treat yourself if you've never seen Zombie.
Yeah, so there's some horror directors and some more violent filmmaking aspect into it. So what we also have is some amazing gothic atmosphere, some wind, some fog, kind of darker, moodier lighting. So you have this violence, you've got this, kind of exploring gothic atmosphere.
Yeah.
The music is different too.
Go Franco.
Straight in.
So which Rabotat artist is going to do a cover of this song?
I fucked up in my name. I should have got his Keoma.
Yeah, Keoma Manos.
It's like clearly Italy. It's fine.
Yeah. The D'Angelises did the music. You could read some more information. We'll include some down in our description, but very iconic in Italian composing. So the music stands out.
Try to save her once again, Keoma.
There's elements of this that stand out, just not even just for the story, but also for the filmmaking elements. The use of slow-mo is hilarious, but also I imagine the technology was newer at that time, so they were just enjoying themselves doing some of this filmmaking. So
that's the thing that's great about these Twilight Westerns is there's a bunch of tropes from spaghetti Westerns, but this is trying to incorporate other elements. So you've got use of slow-mo, which is a Sam Peckinpah technique. Sam Peckinpah did Ride the High Country. He did The Wild Bunch. He did Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. All these really amazing American Westerns that are a little rougher, a little bit more violent. And so he loves slow-mo. He's like the original Zack Snyder.
I can only imagine that this has also inspired so many different filmmakers. So we should get into the plot a little bit before we go too much further. The plot of Keoma is unique. It's very interesting, but it all centers around this character Keoma, played by Franco Nero, the OG Django.
Django, have you always been alone?
Yeah, so Django is actually supposed to be a Django movie. So the first Django comes out in 1966, so the golden age of Westerns, spaghetti Westerns, pasta Westerns out of Italy. And there are probably 200 Django films that came out of Italy afterwards. Some of them star Franco Nero, some of them star just other people. A lot of Italian Westerns would get billed as Django, and this film actually did get billed as Django as well.
Okay.
In some, I think France, it was billed as Django.
That's so funny.
It's a 70s thing, you know? 76 this one came out?
Yeah.
It's a late Western.
Yeah.
That's like a thing too. That's kind of weird. Like everything's basically already been done.
Yeah.
It was kind of seeing because it's pretty original somehow. Don't really know how. It's a good setup. In America, it was billed as produced by Dario Argento.
Really?
Yeah, and Dario Argento, for everyone who's a big horror fan, you know, he wrote Suspiria, Deep Red, these giallo Italian horror films. But he also wrote, I believe, the script, or at least the concept for Once Upon a Time in the West. Classic, maybe maybe the greatest spaghetti Western of all time. So, you know, kind of just using these different people as like a marketing technique.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, hey, we use it in Hollywood too, hey? So back in Italy, you would do the same thing. It
Exactly.
would make sense.
So yeah, but it just blatantly lie.
So the movie starts out with him. He is a cowboy, but
Half
not
Native American.
Yeah, half Native American. So it's kind of a unique spin because normally I think all these cowboys tend to be these like
It's
very
a white guy from the East Coast.
very white guy, usually named John, some type of a dude. In this case, you get Keoma kind of in this intro, but you also get this backstory, and we have a flashback where it goes over the fact that he was part of this really bad incident that happened in his town. They basically decimated a bunch of Native Americans, but he was saved by this witch woman who ends up almost acting like a shaman throughout the whole movie. Which
like a Native American witch.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And so she almost acts as this spirit trying to guide him in the best way possible. So her advice always seems good. She also shows up always at the most intense times in his life or a time where he's introspective.
It's no use. You can't save her.
Bye, have a great time.
You have this setup where there's a plague going on in this town. This town has isolated itself from everybody else. It's not accepting outside help, and they are trying to put plague victims in this own separate little encampment and trying to quarantine. He comes across this group of people who are trying to be taken away to this quarantine camp, basically, and this whole incident ensues. But long story short, this pregnant woman, we don't have her name. I feel like she's a Lisa. It's so bad, I want to call her Lisa.
We'll call her Lisa.
This woman, Lisa, is pregnant, and they're trying to take her to the camp, but Keoma saves her and brings her back to this town that not only he grew up in, but it's also her hometown. The minute he brings her back, they go to a saloon. They basically take a room out, and everybody the whole time is like, "Oh my God, she's a plague victim." Blah blah blah.
You get that woman out of here.
The lady's with me. I got a bad feeling about this.
He asserts himself, he stands his ground. While you're there, though, you also get his backstory. So his dad is white and actually fell in love with his mom, who was Native American, and that's how that whole relationship began. But he has 3 terrible, terrible half-brothers. And these half-brothers are super racist towards him. They are mean. They, the whole time in this movie, are basically talking about gaining control of the town. It's terrible.
That hair.
Little bastard Indian.
It's like the Shire more than the desert or the West.
There's some racism here.
What? What do you say?
Just a bastard Indian or whatever.
Uh-oh.
It wasn't very good.
But he's half Native American. So maybe he's seeing, that was him.
Maybe.
He's seeing himself.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Come on in, Keoma.
The dad's a really good guy. He would help anybody.
Yeah.
He also is kind of implied. That's okay. So this is stop here. So far we have Keoma, we have Lisa, we have the 4 brothers, and we have the dad.
3 brothers.
3 brothers, including Keoma. So we have 3 brothers. One of them looks like Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, we got Donald Sutherland.
They all look completely different. I mean, it's almost implied that the dad just had like different sons with different ladies.
I have
maybe
to assume so, because one of them is like super. We got Blondie.
We got a blonde guy that looks
fried.
Doesn't look like anybody.
No.
So okay.
And we got the grease head. So basically, we have the three half brothers. But they're all very much love their dad, respect their dad. They all still live in town and they follow their dad. But then there's this other character, and he was the hand at the house, and his name is George.
So George is a black man, and I think he was a slave.
I think so too.
So this film takes place after the Civil War, and another thing that I really love about Italian westerns that you don't really get with American westerns is they really explore the aspect of the post-Civil War West.
You've been gone quite a while this time. Where you been? Fighting a war. You win it or lose it?
I just happen to be on the winning side.
Meet anybody faster than you?
Not yet. Maybe I never will.
Come on over here, you overgrown papoose.
What a joker.
So they're Southerners, Southern gentlemen. A lot of the people that are in charge of the plague camp and everything, they're wearing Civil War Confederate hats, the gray hats. So I think it's heavily implied that a lot of these people are having to kind of coexist in a post-Civil War society, because Keoma is a Union soldier. He fought for the Union, and I think it's kind of implied that his brothers were at least on the Confederate side of things, and all their homies are Confederates.
Caldwell, who is the lead guy that you find out
who's an officer.
Yeah.
His hat actually is a gray, like Confederate officer's hat, where everyone else has just like the infantry hat.
Waiting for me, huh? Well, that's the last time he's going to have to wait.
And so we have some racism and some sexism from these Confederate soldiers towards Keoma, towards Lisa, and towards George. George is my favorite character in this whole film.
Oh, he has the best arc, because he starts out, and when him and Keoma meet again for the first time in a long time, they do another flashback where they show Keoma as a kid.
Cool flashback.
I love that flashback.
So odd.
I loved it because
it was so good. It's so weird.
But it sets up the relationship that they had, and basically they find each other again in this town. George is not in a great place. He's not playing music.
He sold a lot of things. He's homeless.
Drinking.
He's like a homeless drunk.
Yeah, and everybody knows him in town as a drunk. Like, everybody makes fun of him for being drunk, and they underestimate him.
And they push him around.
They do. But basically, throughout the plot of the whole story,
he gets his mojo back.
He gets his mojo back.
He gets his groove, and he kicks some ass at the end.
Just like old times, Mr. Shannon.
Welcome back, George.
It's good to be back.
The end is amazing, where everybody kind of comes together, kind of typical Western style. But
well, that's one of the things I want to say too. Is well, there aren't a lot of Western tropes in this. This Gothic atmosphere, the kind of mystical elements with the witch and things like that. There are some tropes.
Yeah.
And one of the tropes is one of the first scenes when he brings Lisa, the plague victim, he brings her into town, which all of us who've been living through this pandemic know that the last thing you want is to have someone just come on in with the plague to your house, and he makes her sleep in the bed, and they're rightfully very nervous about it. It's like this, before we get into it, this world is just a completely topsy-turvy world from where we're at, because there's like these fascists, and they're like, better put on that mask, boy.
Get your mask on.
I need that mask,
what
boy.
What you afraid of.
I'm afraid of, So it's very weird topsy-turvy world, especially for the West.
Definitely, because then you have Keoma, who is definitely the progressive, that he's the one you're rooting for the whole time.
He's all about freedom.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. If you could sum anything up in this movie, where you get to the end, it's all about freedom.
We're talking about how much we loved all these people and how much, Keoma was like a great watch, but the very end of this movie was baffling. So I guess we'll get there for that.
We will, but I guess to go back to where we were in the plot, he meets George, he has this whole thing, but he comes back to town and basically gets a grasp of his roots again. But as this is all going on, you are intercut with he goes to the plague camp, actually, the quarantine camp. Mm-hmm. So he goes back there. They actually, all the people who are mad that he brought Lisa to the saloon, they bring her back to the camp and essentially put her there. He saves her. So you get all this kind of really cool stuff where you're not in one place all the time. There's actually quite a few scenes where there's a travel montage, that is just, again, hysterical because you have the music in the background.
The music is amazing because it's 100% literal as to what's happening.
About to kick some ass. You can't hide what's inside.
It is?
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost
I'm here in front of these men.
I'm here.
Gun in hand and waiting for what will be. Back in my mind, see memories of bodies on the ground. And you're there.
There's a Frenchman.
Waiting for
you have fun.
who will take me away.
Wow.
What I love about Italian movies in general is we've seen all different kinds of giallo and later actual slasher films from them. All kinds of just different weird Italian films. They're always weird. The plots are always weird. Cinematography's weird. There's weird elements. There's they're striving to try to make things unique.
Yeah.
And interesting, while also kind of ripping off American cinema, but it's they're doing their own thing. It's very odd.
It's derivative.
It's derivative, but it's I don't know, something about the way that they're made, they're just great.
What's the name of the man who took you to the saloon? Tell me his name. Tell me his name.
Guy looks super Italian underneath that mask. His hair, face.
So that's throughout the whole thing. It permeates. You know the minute you're watching it, it's an Italian film. But yeah, it's crazy. Then you get through all these different scenes, trials and tribulations. He has this whole crazy epic where it's like the town at some point crucifies him for trying to help people.
There's some Jesus references in there.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
Take me to
Keoma kind of looks like Chris Stapleton. He has the beard. He has a very Jesus-y look to him.
Yeah. So it kind of, the minute you actually they started to bring him over and they were going to do whatever they're doing, you were like, oh, they're going to set this up like a crucifixion. Like, it's totally going to happen.
It's kind of playing it up because then they also, we're not going to give everything away, but some things happen with some of the characters that we just talked about, these beloved characters. And, they basically crucify him. So they're setting it up almost as if, like, he's a martyr.
Well, and he kind of is, because a lot of the reason why they're doing this all comes back to, too, like, not only his reputation in town, but it also comes back to this plague and the way that he came in and he brought Lisa in, and they're super upset about that. So even at one point, there's this impassioned speech by, I think it's one of the brothers. It might be Donald Sutherland or it's Greasehead. One of those guys goes into this whole thing about, like, we're going to reclaim this town. We're going to get things back in order. Frig this guy. He's a nightmare, whatever. So it plays out, and they treat Keoma terribly. But then he gets saved. Lisa ends up coming to his rescue because luckily he's got a friend in her. And yeah, like you said, a lot of the
Then the ending happens.
Yeah, the ending happens. There's
a horrific windstorm.
Yeah.
There's so many scenes where it's just hilarious how much wind and dust is in the air. It looks great. It looks so cool, but, just like preposterous.
What ends up happening is that Lisa ends up saving Keoma from town, and then they go and they travel out into some kind of isolated area, basically.
Yeah, it's like the ruins of like an area. I'm not really sure what the deal is with it, but there's like a ruined, kind of bombed out area, and Lisa ends up going into labor after she saves Keoma. And while she's screaming and having this horrific sounding childbirth, the brothers, realizing Keoma is off his crucifix, go and find him to hunt him down. And there's this amazingly creepy, kind of gripping scene where she's screaming.
With this epic reverb on everything.
And he kills all his brothers. And so you're like, hell yeah. Now the baby's born. Oh, she died. Oh, that sucks. Well, we have our hero, Keoma, the guy who's here to save the day. He's killed the bad guys. He killed the other bad guy. He's killed everyone.
He's killed everyone. Dead. Caldwell's dead. His brothers are dead. Basically, he goes through the whole process of all this. Justice is served in all the right ways, except what happens to Lisa.
So movie logic dictates that he would take this baby and be like, I'm going to raise this baby as my own. I'm going to raise him right.
And not only that, the witch shows up at the end, too. It's like the last incarnation of you seeing her, and she's got the baby. And she's holding the baby. She's like, this baby.
You have to take the baby. So the lady who's been his guide this entire time.
I can't, Keoma! He'll die!
He can't die! And you know why? Because he's free! And the man who is free never dies!
What?
What?
She's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's a baby!
His Virgil through the Stante Inferno of hell literally is like, take this baby, that's like your job. And he goes, a baby must be born free. And she's like, well, the baby's gonna die. Well, not if he's free.
Thug life.
And he just rides away.
Thug life.
While she's holding this baby, and you're like, what the fuck?
And the rationale behind all that, I mean, you're just sitting there thinking, like, this baby's gonna die, because this baby doesn't stand a chance. It's a newborn, and the witch is obviously somewhat of a figment of his imagination.
He's like, I'm no one's baby daddy.
He's so
I ain't no one's baby daddy.
Yeah.
And he just rides off into the sunset, and he's just going. It's hilarious.
And that's it.
That was it, and that's how it ends. So the ending was a little like distasteful, a little bit. I didn't really like that at all, especially because you end up kind of pulling for this guy.
I just think what they tried to do with it is they tried working in so many different metaphors, like working in the religion side, and they're trying to tackle all these other things with racism and with the plague and with this idea of quarantining and subjecting people, like the outsider mentality. You've got all these things you're working with, and it's good, it's rich. It's just a lot, and I feel like that's where you kind of miss the fuses every once in a while. Like the fuse box didn't quite lock in, and that's how the ending felt, because I see the mentality behind what he's saying. It just, in practicality, made literally no sense, and it just was like, oh, that baby's gonna frickin' die.
Maybe in Italian it would make more sense, but the Italian overdub or the English overdub, yeah, no good.
No.
So that was a little disappointing as far as that goes.
But hey, interesting pick. I'm really, really stoked. And I'm excited to see some more of these movies that you recommend, because honestly, that was, even though it had a weird ending, it was an interesting watch. And there were so many elements of it unintentionally funny that if you're somebody who just is a casual watcher of film, especially if you like bad film, there's some moments of it that are hysterical. I would particularly say the music, the very literal.
You've got amazing cinematography, really interesting. It never got like boring to look at, because they clearly didn't film in the desert.
No.
They're filming in it's like the middle of Italy. It looks like the Shire from Lord of the Rings. Speaking of Lord of the Rings, it's green and gorgeous and beautiful and abundant. Nowhere.
There's like
in the
3
West.
scenes with sand that you're like, maybe they filmed that somewhere else. Maybe they went to
Which
Spain.
they did. They went to Spain. They went to Almeria, which is where they filmed a lot of Italian spaghetti westerns were filmed, Good, Bad, and the Ugly and stuff. So the camp is there, but a majority of the town is shot in Rome. Yeah. A majority of the countryside is just the Italian countryside. So there's weird things like that. The acting performance is great. Now I can tell you something that's interesting about this film too. Yeah. Did a little bit of research on Keoma, and when they originally were going to shoot this as a Django film, scrapped it. We're not going to go with that. So every day the director was rewriting the script as they were going, and what he did is he took suggestions for everything from plot points, dialogue, shot setups. Everything was from cast and crew. So everyone got to kind of contribute to this film. It's a very democratic process, the way that it was made. That was really interesting because there's some really interesting concepts. They are dealing a little bit of a black man in a post-Civil War society. So they're talking about that a little bit. They're talking about the Native American kind of half-breed thing that they call him, which is just completely racist. But they're covering something like that. Talking about something I've never seen, a plague in a Western. You never see that. So there's just some really cool, there's a lot of creativity in this. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend it. It's not that long. Yeah. It's an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes. So it's if you want to watch something like a weird, odd film, I would highly recommend it. I really don't. It's not something I'm gonna get the poster and hang it up in my in our bedroom, so I can see Keoma. I'd put it in the bathroom,
Just giving it to him, do your best. I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. It was good. The ending really was distasteful for me.
I'll give you an 8
I would
10.
give a 10 out of 10 just for the literal music alone. I know I keep going back to that. There is really though something every time you'd hear the little beginnings of the music, you're oh my god, they're about to lay it down. And there was just certain lines that were just, you can't even make it up. So yeah, I would love to do this again, Mr. Manos. You have music upon music coming out over the next few months. We did this in honor of your first single, so maybe if you wouldn't mind, you should do a little bit of a plug for Shamelessly.
Yeah, definitely. My project for Nikki Manos is based in kind of a homage to all these different westerns that I watched with my grandpa and on my own. I mean, ever since pandemic kind of started, I looked up all the top westerns from around the world, and over the last year I've just worked my way through them. I've probably seen 80 westerns since now, and so I've saved a couple of the really good ones just to watch with her, and also maybe we could make a game out of it.
Yeah, and it was a fun game. We're going to do this again. We're keeping the cups. We got our good, we got our bad, and we got our
Ugly.
cutie.
Ugly.
That I'm gonna write it in for the next time. But thank you for bringing me into your world. I appreciate it. It was really fun learning about westerns, and yeah, I'm honestly not privy to his western watching, so it's really cool to see what you picked. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I think we should do one more cheers for Keoma, one cheers for Rabotat Radio episode 5.
Oh,
Thank you, Nikki.
yeah. Thank you, Madame.
And thank you, fam, for joining us for another episode. Stay tuned for the next one of Rabotat Radio. What? Keoma!
That's what they should have put in there.